In this edition of Something Cinematic, I review the number one movie in the box office right now, the sci-fi sports film Real Steel. And after that, I'll be giving my thoughts on the new trailer, the movie that will kick off the summer next year, the big superhero movie, The Avengers. You're listening to Something Cinematic. Something new. Something different. Something entertaining. Something informative. Something creative. And something to listen to. You're listening to Something Cinematic. A show for moviegoers by a moviegoer. Something Cinematic begins right now. Welcome to Something Cinematic. I am Timdiana, your host of this podcast, and actually welcome to a new version of Something Cinematic. How does it work now? Is it's going to work with two parts of the show. One part will either be a preview or review of a movie, while the other part's going to be about just movie news or anything else I can think of. So with that said, let's start this off with the review of the episode. In this edition of Something Cinematic, I'm going to be reviewing the latest from director Shawn Levy, a movie about robot boxing. And no, it's not Rock'em Sock'em Robots, although I don't think you should rule out Hollywood for having that idea. It is a movie called Real Steel. It's actually based off of a short story by Richard Matheson, named just Steel. But this is Real Steel, so there's a difference. Anyway, without further ado, let us get to the review of Real Steel. So what did I think of Real Steel? Actually, I was more impressed with it than I was originally thought going into this film. Because, at the core what I'm seeing, it's just, robot boxing. How complicated can that be? Well, it's not complicated, but there's a little more complexity to the movie than you think, especially in the story. The story actually has a lot of interesting elements to it. It's got the sports story idea, and it's got the sci-fi to it. It's also got the underdog story. Of course, you gotta have that with, every sports movie. Thank you, Rocky. Just throwing that out there. Well, I can't really say I blame Rocky. It was a cornerstone for films, and I guess every filmmaker decided, hey, let's just go with that route when it comes to the story of sports movies. But other than that, it also has, kind of family-friendly stuff, and like the story between Hugh Jackman's character and Dakota Goyo's character, being the father and son story. And actually that was the main plot of the movie. It was just their story. And, I think it turned out very well. I actually like the story between the two. I like what they did with it. I'm not sure how it follows the short story, but for what it's worth, it's actually a really good plot. And, actually, I guess you can say it's the second sports movie with kind of a similar plot, a plot like this that I liked. I'm talking about Warrior. I saw that a couple weeks ago, and I could tell going back to talking about Rocky. I could see the elements of Rocky in both Warrior and Real Steel, which I said earlier, which goes to show you what Rocky did for movies. But anyway, getting back to Real Steel, the story is actually, I think, simple but effective. That's the best way of putting it. Now, when it comes to the characters of the film, the movie really follows, it follows Hugh Jackman and Dakota Goyo throughout, the entire movie. They are the central characters, and for the rest of the cast, they do well. They're just not, that developed. they're not horribly developed. It's just they have their particular roles, and that's it. There's nothing more to them. The story is there for Max and Charlie's relationship. And I have to say, I was really impressed with the scenes with Hugh Jackman and Dakota Goyo. I'm sorry, that name is just throwing me off because it's a very interesting name. This is weird. Anyway, yeah, they had some really good scenes together. Every time I saw them together and they had like the big scenes, I believed it. And it was, as I said, it was good. I was impressed with that. I guess you could say that the robot of the film, Adam, I guess he kind of had some, he kind of had a character to him. They didn't really express it a lot, like, he actually had, like, emotions in that, but you just, like, you could tell from some of the shots that, yeah, there was more to him than just being just a robot. And the characters of Max and Charlie treated him as such, more Max than Charlie. Actually, speaking of which, I want to talk about Hugh Jackman's character, because when the movie started off, I felt like this is pretty much, Hugh Jackman's strong point, being this kind of character. But then again, it works. But in the end, I think he turns out a little bit better than I expected him to be. I was actually kind of concerned about how his character was going to go, because, as I said, he seemed very familiar to his other characters. But as I said, he turns out better than I thought he would. And again, it kind of also follows that, that movie format about, when a character like him changes his ways and whatnot and stuff like that. But, as I said, for the millionth time, it works. For being a movie that's put into the future, it was actually really subtle. They don't really say what year it is, but they say it's sometime after the year of 2016, because they bring up that in the movie, and they also bring up the year 2014, so we can pretty much assume that they are in the year, I guess, 2020. Anyway, what I liked about the movie is how subtle the future world was, because, they still had cars, and they weren't, like, all flying around and stuff like that, and the only real futuristic thing that they had were the touch screens. And as you can see in the world today, it actually makes that idea believable. Well, that, they had giant robots boxing each other, so that's as futuristic as you're going to get when it comes to that department. But as I said, it's very subtle with its futuristic world, and I liked it for that. I could believe it. I think the movie actually was trying to put in some interesting shots in the movie. They had, particular moments and images that, were supposed to be interesting. Let's try to give an example. I think one of the good shots I liked was the introduction to Max and Charlie's character, how they're on opposite sides of each other. And they took a couple seconds to show that, so I was like, yeah, I think they're trying to do something with that. They had other moments where, they did like an entire, like, quick scene with, really no dialogue or really any sound. They just showed what happened and how they still express character and stuff like that. I don't know what they were trying to do with that. I don't know if they were sitting there and they were wondering, it's like, yeah, let's do something completely creative. No one will see it coming. Or they were just trying to do something. But, I'm not going to complain about that. I don't think it took away from the film. I just think it was different. One of the things that I extremely was impressed with seeing was the robots. I really loved the design of each robot, how each one was different, how they stood out, and just the effects of the robots. I think one of my favorite designs when it comes to the robots is the robot Twin City, the one with the two heads. I love it because he's supposed to be, basically the image of the Twin Towers. Because not only does he have two heads, but he's got, like, the lights of the buildings and stuff like that. He was a really cool-looking robot. But, each of the robots kind of spoke out in their, characters and stuff like that. And, I was impressed with the animatronics that they used for them, as well as the CG effects. So, yeah, that's all I gotta say about that. Okay, I actually think that kind of wraps up Real Steel. So, what are my overall thoughts on the movie? I guess you could say it's a robotic version of Rocky. You could. But there is some more to it than just that. There's a good story between a father and son. it actually has a combination of all kinds of different movies. So yeah, there's a lot of interesting stuff to this film, and honestly, it's a good movie. In fact, I am actually going to go off and say that it's one of the better films of the year. It may not be the best one, it may not make a top 10 list for me, but it could be like number 11 or 12, depending how the rest of the year goes. But yeah, I think it's one of the better films of the year, and I think it's worth seeing. It's fun, exciting, and I think it's good-hearted. But where does it fall upon the hat scale, might you ask? Well, I am going to give Real Steel a 4 out of 5 for being a very solid film. And that will do it right now for Real Steel. In just a little bit, I'm going to be talking about the trailer to The Avenger.